And I would like to speak about intuitive music. This term, like many other terms in the actual music, is one which I have purposely introduced, also not only in order to make clear that I want something specific, but also to get rid of other words. For example, music which is played freely, without any score, is nowadays sometimes called free improvisation, like in free jazz, let's say. Though there are certain rules, as the word says, it should be jazz. Otherwise they would just call free music. But they say free jazz, so they have certain rules to produce something that somehow is still what people call jazz. Then there is improvisation in folklore music, in India, for example, though there's very little, really very little actual freedom. The system is extremely narrow, and an Indian musician who learns from his master learns all the rules, how to make the small variations with the ragas and talas, and there's very little personal invention. There's practically no personal invention. Very, very slow in history, this way of improvising changes. I try to get rid of the word improvisation because it always means there are certain rules of style, of rhythm, of harmony, of melody, of the formal sectioning of a musical process, etc. Since 1964, when I started to tour intensely with a group of players, I had toured already before, since '58, with other players, but we played music that I had determined with traditional notation. In '64, I became more and more daring in what I was giving my co-players and myself as graphic material. There was the score of procession, which consists only of plus and minus signs and equal signs. And it says, use events from my previous works, compositions. The pianist drawing on the 11 piano pieces, the tam-tam player drawing on microphony 1, events of microphony 1, the viola player drawing on Song of the Youth and Momenta, and the electronium player drawing on solo, also on Song of the Youth, and I think also of Momenta. Which means they use events from my previous works as material, as raw material, and then transform it according to transformation signs. And in the score of procession, all I have composed are transformation signs, what to do with events that they use from my older music. A plus sign means play an event that is higher or longer or louder than the event which you have just played before or which another player has played before. A minus sign means play an event which is lower or softer or shorter, or which has fewer limbs. I forgot to say, which has more limbs. Limbs, I mean rhythmic attacks, sections. Let's say you have a certain duration in time. If it has just one limb, then I don't segment it. Segments, that's the word. When I do ta-ta, finished, then I have two segments, or limbs we say in German, Glieder, like a body which has limbs, or 3, or 4, or 5, etc. So when the number of limbs increases, that's with a plus sign. With a minus sign, it decreases. These four categories are always considered from one musical event to the next. Higher, or longer, or louder, or more segments. minus sign, lower or softer, or fewer segments, or shorter. Equal sign, play the same as what you have heard before or played before yourself. That's all. And then was a series of signs. 4 players play a performance of any length, which is longer, as I said in the score, than 23 minutes. That is a duration which is the result of many performances in which we found out that that is the minimum of time that this piece needs in order to develop. And one can end at any moment when one feels one should end. And it says, when you start a new performance and it sounds like the previous one, stop and start again. And when an end has come and it sounds like a previous ending, continue and try to find an ending that has not occurred before. You see, there is the process described more and more, the transformation from event to event, but what is transforming is less and less described. The genetic rules are given, and the genetic principles for the development of a music. This increases in short waves, in Kurzwelle, and then in 68, all of a sudden, I reach a moment in my composition where I practically give nothing, almost nothing, to the performer, and I considered myself being one of the performers of our group. And then I wrote 15 texts. Then there occurred texts like the following ones. That is the book with 15 compositions. We have performed 12 of them, 1969, during 8 days, 2 hours per day, and recorded these 12. We have never rehearsed any of them before we played them, and we have not discussed. That's not true. We have not discussed all of them before we played them. We have discussed a few of them because 2 texts we had played before in public. The one which I'm going to play now, we had played once before in Brussels. The first text, words, of this collection from the 7 days sounds as follows. Circa 4 players. Circa already, 4, maybe 3, maybe 5, but not 7. Right durations, play a sound. Play it for so long until you feel that you should stop. Again, play a sound. Play it for so long until you feel that you should stop. And so on. Stop when you feel that you should stop. But whether you play or stop, keep listening to the others. At best, play when people are listening. Do not rehearse. That's what we used, and then came out a performance of, I don't remember exactly, I would say half an hour. And you will hear it beginning of next year on a record, this recording. The next text says, it has a little drawing, a curve that goes out of the paper and comes back. And it says, unlimited. This text has been used for a performance with 9 players. It says 4 ensembles, and we played for a whole night in Saint-Paul-de-Vence, in south of France. We started in a court with the public. It was a music festival. We started playing before the people came, and then after about 2.5 hours, the musicians left one by one into the forests, and playing, sometimes came back into the court and disappeared again. And it all ended about at 3 o'clock in the morning. The text is unlimited. Play a sound with the certainty that you have an infinite amount of time and space. I have written later then comments on these texts. I said, imagine someone would have the certainty that he has an infinite amount of time and space. I haven't met any person up to now who has really and totally achieved that state. But I mean, one can approach it. And then it leads to the most incredible sounds and musical actions if you really think you have an infinite amount of time and space. You don't need to think when it is finished, if the people will hear, listen or not listen. You don't care about if you die in the meantime. You don't care if the sound may be considered being too long that you play. If the space that you need is just refrained by a hole or by the body of your instrument or by your own body, you have an infinite amount of space, etc. This leads to, when one really meditates on this text, it leads to the most incredible actions and sounds, etc. Another one is connection for ensemble. Play a vibration in the rhythm of your body, of your body, the player. Play a vibration in the rhythm of your heart. That's possible. Play a vibration in the rhythm of your breathing. Play a vibration in the rhythm of your thinking. Play a vibration in the rhythm of your intuition. Play a vibration in the rhythm of your enlightenment. Play a vibration in the rhythm of the universe. Mix these vibrations freely. Leave enough silence between them. Now, you can imagine what kind of reaction I got from these texts. Not only from my co-players who thought I had flipped out completely. I had for some time, I must say, but in a very unusual way, not with any drugs or so. And not to speak of the people who are not performers themselves and who have no idea what such stimulus can generate in a musical mind and in a musician. I give just a few comments. Play a vibration in the rhythm of your thinking. When I gave a seminar the same year in Darmstadt at the International Courses for Contemporary Music, none of the 14 young composers knew what I could mean by that. And they said, just take a pencil and do this on the table, knock on the table, whenever your thinking changes the direction. We could do this together now. It would be quite interesting if you have at a chair or something where you can make a noise on. Are these chairs with plastic material? Yes. Well, the back of the chairs is plastic material. Those who want to participate, just take a pencil or a ring or whatever you have, and just the best is you close the eyes. If not, then you look. And whenever you realize that your thinking is changing, then you knock on the table. So we can start now. etc. Could you try to slow it down, for example, just for a moment? Which means try to keep the same, or block out the thinking. Which means stop it. When you think, I'm knocking. Aha, he is knocking. I'm in the hall. Oh, my hair. How may it look like? This. Stop. Each time, stop, deep, stop. Slow it down. And you try to slow it down. Stop. Etc. So what I mean is when this is done with musicians, then you will see that every action has a reaction. In particular, sound action has reactions, and you get groups of attacks, of changes, which are very dense as soon as someone does something quite attractive, where he breaks into someone who is trying to keep the same thought going. The rhythm of the thinking. Another example, it says here, play a vibration in the rhythm of the universe. We have a pianist, Mr. Kontowski, in our group, who is an extreme intellectual. And everything must be intellectually, mentally clear. Otherwise, he says, at least, he can't do anything. So he said, you will hear later on with the text that I'm going to play. That was a great problem for him. So I said, what do you mean by rhythm of the universe? What is all that mystic stuff here? And I said, well, have you never had dreams where you fly from star to star? Oh, I said, no, I don't have this kind of I said, what are you talking about? Then I said, well, have you any inner view or inner vision of how the planets are rotating around the sun? What do you mean? Well, I said, at least you have an intellectual knowledge how long it takes for the moon around the earth, or the earth around the sun, how many days it takes in earth days, and how many earth days the Mercury takes. And he said, well, I'm not so well informed about the planets. And well, I could have, but that's also slow. I say, no, when it is in your mind, it has your own time, hasn't it? Imagine it. Just the rhythm of the universe. I don't ask tonight that you go beyond the solar system, but just try. And he would say, let's stop and take someone else, you see. I said, well, you see, perhaps the constellations. Think Cassiopeia, or all the other constellations of the stars. He said, oh, you mean Webern? I said, yes. He said, well, okay, let's start. Well, the fact that some of you laugh shows that you mean what Webern is. Webern is the man who is an extreme constructivist in music who works with intervals. For example, Stravinsky also has one drawn a graph in order to make clear to other people what he is in music. And then, for example, Webern you can describe like this. You see, intervals. Or doing this as an interval, and then this. And then perhaps, if it's symmetry, he does this, etc. So these lines, naturally, are just a help at the moment. He doesn't play glissandos all the time. So what it really is points, which have a very, very particular constellations. Etc. So there is was a musician who has worked with very clear intervals, And the rhythm is very, very clearly here a graphic rhythm. When I just play it like da, beep, do, ba-da-da. So this automatically, for every musician who has read notes since centuries, this becomes a rhythm. And the absolute time is not so important as the proportion. And since that moment, in this particular piece, this pianist played what I call the bones, which means the most constructive elements, and very few, and all the others were attaching like flies themselves on these wonderful constructions that he played. And immediately he could do something with the rhythm of the universe. I had made a few suggestions and it made click in his mind. Whereas I must say, when the sentence came, play a vibration in the rhythm of your enlightenment, then he simply had a long silence. Well, because he was very honest with himself. I mean, he said, I don't know what to do with that indication. When that indication comes, I just stop and start again when the next one comes. It's fine. It's wonderful. So now I come to the text. You can read these texts if you are really interested. They are printed at another time. And I read just the extreme, which has brought me most of the accusations during my whole life as a composer, because now the rationalists, not only among the music critics, but among the intellectuals in general, think that I have become very dangerous. And it says, for ensemble, it is the title, think nothing. Wait until it is absolutely still within you. When you have attained this, begin to play. As soon as you start to think, stop. And try to reattain the state of non-thinking. Then continue playing. That's all. When we first played this text with our group, in the meantime it has been played by many different other groups, and I'm beginning now to compare different performances that are made with the same text. And it's very interesting to hear and to study that different performances of different groups even have very similar characteristics. And what are the similar characteristics? That is interesting to study. So when we played this for the first time at the music festival in Brussels, we purposely had not played it before. And too strange to believe, we played. So afterwards, there remains only one question. Either all 5 players, me included, were liars, or were cheating themselves, or something was going on that worked. And since then, we have never had any trouble. And there comes then that question from intellectuals, well, they fool themselves. What are they doing? They are idiots. So for someone who has, at one point or another in his life, gone deeper into his whole person and the construction of his personality, what the brain is, what the mind is, who is saying when I say I am thinking? Who is saying this? Etc. Then this person who says I am thinking can easily say I am decided not to think now. So one is not identifying with the brain, but the brain activity, the thinking activity, is something that is subordinated under a higher, how do you call this? A higher, pardon? Yes, a higher self, which uses the brain as a computer, that's all. So acting or listening or doing something without thinking is the state of pure intuitive activity, intuitive action. And not necessarily using the brain as a control. You can rehearse quite a lot in thinking, training your fingers, controlling what you're doing. Aha, now he is playing, now I should do this, which means thinking. Think about what I'm doing. But you can also act now. And stop the thinking, and as soon as you start thinking, oh, I just did that, I must stop. As soon as reflection or thinking starts, what we call thinking. Also noticing as being part of, which means the thinking that I think. Stop. That's all that is asked for. And it needs some time, and it needs a special training of the musicians. Most of the people, again, now I come to the pianist, he said, it's impossible, I think all the time. He said, what you're asking for is absolutely impossible. Well, I said, can't you stop? He said, no, I can't stop thinking. That's ridiculous. When I'm not here, then I think of my next concert, or I'm rehearsing the 10th piano piece in my memory. I'm always thinking. But I said, stop it. He said, how? And this was quite unusual because, these are the simplest things in life. When someone says, I can't sleep, then I say, well, stop thinking. Then you will fall asleep right away. Or decide to sleep. Stop. And you can sleep at any moment. And most of the people can't do that. They haven't even thought about not thinking. Yeah, well, it seems to be funny. It's deadly serious. And the musicians do these things now quite regularly. At least they think about the possibility. What this might mean for them and how they could rehearse it. So for musicianship and for musical rehearsal, something else is required than the musical talent, than the technique that they have learned, the ability to read notes. There are certain abilities required now in order to play this sort of music that I call now intuitive music, which the traditional musician has never learned, has even never thought about it. Whereas we know that the most profound moments in musical interpretation and composition are those which are not relative, which are not relativated to something else, which are not the result of mental processes, which are not simply deductible to what we know, what has happened before, historically, etc. So we have performed, I don't know if some of you were there, here in London with the BBC Orchestra, in January 70. Was quite unusual for the BBC Orchestra how we did it, how we rehearsed. It was total different situation for 4 days. This orchestra was quite amazed about the whole method of rehearsing. We have performed this text. Just a moment. Go, where is it? Set sail for the sun. Set sail for the sun. Play a tone for so long until you hear its individual vibrations. Play a tone for so long until you hear its individual vibrations. Hold the tone and listen to the tones of the others. To all of them together, not to individual ones. There's that total tone now. And slowly move your tone until you arrive at complete harmony. And that's not only pitches, that's rhythm, that's dynamics, that's timbre. Harmony means unifying. Consonance. And the whole sound turns to gold, to pure, gently shimmering fire. Well, there an intuitive imagination is required. And like all the texts, it transcends the mental until the whole sound turns to gold, to pure, gently shimmering fire. I haven't tried to explain this to the orchestra. I have just said, well, if you have never done meditation, where, let's say, the gold light is a very particular experience in a certain state, that total golden light, the sunlight. Well, but not the violet sunlight or the reddish sunlight. I mean now the gold, that golden color. If you don't know about it, just do whatever comes. And they did. And the ending was quite similar to several endings that we had with small groups. It was an interesting experience. Well, all the texts will be published on record. No, not published. How do you say? Distributed on records, on 7 records. It was exactly for 7 records. That was not intended. It's for 7 hours of music. Some 15 minutes long, some 48 minutes long, 43, 32, etc. But the 12 texts together make 7 records. They were all recorded in this 1 week in Darmstadt in '69 without any corrections, and I think it's incredible what came out of it. Now I play the recording, one of these recordings, which was played with our group. When I say our group, then it is again Kontarski, it was Fritsch, it was Geelhaar and Allings at the tam-tam, and Boyer electronium, and myself playing several instruments, small instruments, and filters and potentiometers. Perhaps I read, before you hear it, once more the text. It says, think nothing. Wait until it is absolutely still within you. When you have attained this, begin to play. As soon as you start to think, stop. And try to reattain the state of non-thinking, then continue playing.